The 1970s in California, particularly the suburbs of Sacramento, were meant to be an era of peace and burgeoning freedom, yet they became a hunting ground for a predator whose audacity and sheer volume of crimes remain almost unparalleled in American history. Beginning as the Visalia Ransacker in 1974 and evolving through the moniker of the East Area Rapist, EAR, and the original Night Stalker, ONS, this single individual waged a terrifying decade-long war against middle-class families. He was a phantom who could move through communities undetected, committing over 50 rapes and 13 brutal murders, and his evasion of capture for over 40 years cemented his status as a legendary, terrifying ghost in the state's criminal lore. The early phase of his crime spree as the East Area Rapist established his chilling modus operandi, MO. Operating primarily in Sacramento and nearby communities, the killer would methodically stalk his victims, often women alone or young couples, entering their homes through unlocked windows or sliding doors. He was a master of surprise and control, tying up victims with meticulously planned knots and often spending hours inside the homes, not only committing heinous acts, but also calmly ransacking the premises, stealing personal trinkets, coins, and often the victim's jewelry, demonstrating a bizarre blend of sexual sadism and petty theft. What set the EAR apart was his sophisticated level of psychological torture. In cases where couples were targeted, he would often bind the male victim, placing dishes on his back and threatening to kill both victims if the dishes moved, a tactic designed to inflict maximum psychological terror on the bound individual. He would then terrorize the female victim, sometimes returning to the male victim to mock his helplessness. This calculated cruelty suggested a killer who was not merely driven by impulse, but by a deep-seated need for control and the degradation of his victims, often speaking in chilling whispers or using crude language to maximize fear. The geographical breadth of his attacks was baffling to law enforcement. He would strike in one community, disappear for months, and then reappear dozens of miles away, suggesting a high degree of mobility and possibly a job that required travel. His ability to change his tactics, targets, and locations kept multiple police agencies chasing fragmented leads. The lack of a central database or unified forensic approach during the 1970s meant that the Sacramento police initially struggled to connect their East Area Rapist cases with the seemingly unrelated string of original Night Stalker murders occurring in Southern California. The killer transitioned from the EAR persona into the more brutal original Night Stalker ONS persona in 1979, shifting from primarily rape to calculated murder. The ONS attacks, beginning with the brutal double murder of Dr. Robert Offerman and Deborah Manning in Goleta, California, retained the elements of home invasion and binding, but now included the definitive signature of murder. These were not messy, panicked acts, but controlled assassinations. This change in MO indicated an escalation in the killer's psychological needs and the terrifying realization that the perpetrator was now comfortable with taking life. The ONS murders continued throughout the 1980s, striking fear into Southern California communities like Ventura, Dana Point, and Irvine. The victims were couples, often found bound and shot or bludgeoned. The sheer terror of these attacks led to massive public awareness campaigns, but the killer always seemed one step ahead. Families bought firearms, installed elaborate alarm systems, and slept with baseball bats, fundamentally changing the feeling of safety in California's suburbs. The unknown identity of the killer created a shared nightmare that crossed city lines and haunted the entire state. The investigation became known as one of the most frustrating multi-jurisdictional manhunts in American history. Detectives compiled massive paper files, creating detailed but ultimately useless composite sketches based on vague witness descriptions. The fact that the killer was often seen by victims suggested he wore disguises or was just unremarkable enough to blend into the suburban landscape. The failure to connect the EAR and ONS cases initially, it took DNA evidence in the early 2000s to definitively confirm they were the same person, is a painful reminder of the limitations of older police work. The crucial link that eventually allowed the case to be solved was the consistent DNA evidence the killer left behind at multiple crime scenes. The advent of the Combined DNA Index System, CODIS, allowed investigators to digitally connect the Sacramento rapes with the Southern California murders, officially unifying the disparate crimes under one horrific umbrella, which led the media to coin the moniker the Golden State Killer, GSK. This confirmed the terrifying scope of his activities. He was responsible for over 100 burglaries, 50 rapes, and 13 murders. For decades, the case went cold, seemingly unsolvable. The killer had disappeared after 1986, leading many to believe he was either deceased, imprisoned for a lesser crime, or had simply moved out of state. However, the dedicated work of true crime writers and persistent cold case detectives never allowed the case to die. The tireless advocacy of people like Michelle McNamara, whose book I'll Be Gone in the Dark posthumously brought massive public attention to the case, kept the pressure on authorities. The ultimate shocking breakthrough came in 2018 through the revolutionary use of forensic genealogy. Investigators took the killer's DNA profile from the crime scenes and uploaded it to public genealogy databases. They were able to find distant relatives of the suspect and painstakingly build a family tree that led to one individual, Joseph James DeAngelo, a former police officer and Navy veteran living a quiet, unassuming life in Citrus Heights, California. The revelation that the Phantom of California Terror had been a former civil servant who had once sworn to uphold the law was a staggering twist that few had predicted. The arrest of DeAngelo finally ended the decades of uncertainty for the victims' families. His arrest provided a powerful validation of genetic genealogy as a tool for solving the most impenetrable cold cases. The monster who had terrorized an entire generation of Californians was revealed to be a seemingly normal old man, a husband and a grandfather, hiding in plain sight for over 30 years after his last confirmed attack. While DeAngelo's capture solved the mystery of who the Golden State Killer was, the details of his decade of terror continue to be studied. The investigation continues to try and determine if he had accomplices, if he was responsible for other crimes not yet linked to his DNA, and exactly how a police officer managed to be such a prolific criminal without once being suspected by his peers. The psychological profile of a man who spent his evenings stalking and destroying families while spending his days as an agent of the state remains a subject of intense criminal and psychological study. The story of the Golden State Killer stands as a modern triumph of forensic science over criminal cunning. It is a dual narrative, the years of unmitigated terror that defined the dark side of suburban America and the eventual hard-won victory of justice. It is a powerful reminder that even the most meticulous and shadowy predators can eventually be unmasked by technology and the relentless pursuit of the truth. The arrest of Joseph James DeAngelo brought an end to the manhunt, but the painful legacy of the Golden State Killer's victims continues to resonate.